You're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/CheapGeek. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks Podcast. It's episode number 139.
Toxic algae kills dogs, nuclear explosion in Russia, human-animal hybrids, and tardigrades are now on the moon.
Yeah.
Loaded.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
So here we are again. Welcome back to CreepGeeks Podcast. As if this is your very first time tuning into the podcast, we very much appreciate it. Got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. Yeah. So you can find us on all major platforms if you'd like to listen to the podcast. And if you're listening right now, that means you found us. Yay. And we very much appreciate that. So anyway, with this podcast so far, we've been doing pretty good. We've got a couple episodes for you to choose from, about 139, give or take.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So it's been a little bit of a labor of love for us, and it looks like people are starting to listen. So if you'd like to share the podcast, rest assured it'll be worth listening to. Yeah. But if you have worries, you can do it anonymously. It's okay. But anyway, this podcast is about what?
Well, the CreepGeeks Podcast is an offbeat news podcast that takes a lighthearted approach to the paranormal, cryptid, strange, the silly, and trending tech topics circulating the web, broadcasting paranormal news and fun stories from our underground bunker in the mountains of western North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And this podcast is about all sorts of cool stuff. So anyway, before we get started with the podcast, we have to go through and tell you different ways you can support us, because that's evidently what you have to do these days, okay? We have a couple different ways for you to support the podcast. The first way and the easiest way is just to listen, and we appreciate that. The next way is, if you do listen, how about share? Do a little review.
Share and review.
Yes. Because that does what?
Okay, so if you share the podcast, share it with your friends, share it with people who you think would be interested in the stuff we talk about. If you give us a review, you can give us a review on any major podcast platform that you can find us. When you review a podcast, it actually increases that podcast's visibility and allows other potential listeners to find the podcast.
Yeah. And we are on pretty much anywhere you want to listen. So iHeartRadio, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio. Did I already say it? Apple. Android versions of the Google Play Music, all that good stuff. RSS feeds. Anyway, wherever you want to listen to us, you can find us.
Literally. Oh, and we're on Podcoin. So if you, if you listen to,
we're on Podbean and Blueberry too.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
I only mentioned Podcoin because if you need that incentive, Podcoin is like a bit currency where you listen to podcasts and you earn
cryptocurrency.
Some form of cryptocurrency.
So, like in 75 years, you'll be able to buy something.
You'll have like 1/8 of a Bitcoin.
Ooh, very nice.
But I think you can also win contests. I don't know. One of our listeners told me about it, and I was like, "Oh, so you need an incentive to enjoy our talking?" Okay. So.
You should just say thank you.
Well, it's a listener I know, so yeah.
Very nice. So yeah, there's all sorts of different ways to listen. You can also sort of participate in the podcast in a couple different ways. Our Facebook group is probably the easiest way. It's pretty hard to get to. What's it called?
CreepGeeks Facebook group.
It's called the CreepGeeks Facebook group. So if you're on the Facebooks and you type in CreepGeeks, you're probably going to find us. We have lots of stuff that we share. It's pretty active, and it's fun. And there's nothing there to be embarrassed of.
Yeah.
So
lots of stuff you can share to your own page, too, if you need. Yeah.
It's good. And if you want to listen to the podcast and you don't want to go through all those players and stuff like that, you can go to our website, CreepGeeks.com.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest podcast episode will be right there. And you can listen that way. You can also contact us.
You can also call the show. That phone number is going to be 575-208 4025, or you can email us, and that's going to be contact@creepgeeks.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're on the website, there is that contact form that you can
That I built.
Yep. And you can fill it out and leave a message, if you will, or a little story, or a little, how do you say it?
Anecdotal
something.
story.
Yes.
Or a hot tip, like
Ooh,
a location.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, hot mic. Hot mic. Got a hot mic.
Well, no, because we've actually gotten 2 recommendations recently. One through Instagram.
Yes.
And then another, I think, through Facebook.
Yes.
But the
surprisingly enough, we get more tips through Instagram.
Yeah.
I guess, or the Facebook group as well. But anyway, enough about that.
Yeah.
So, and there is one other way that you can support the podcast, and this is one of those ways. It's basically something we got to tell you. It's good though. It's easy. So you can support the podcast with little to no effort. Won't cost you anything at all, right? So the next time you're shopping on Amazon, if you use our affiliate link, we'll get a small percentage. It's nice. Doesn't change your price. And it helps us to keep gas flowing in our Albino Rhino, which is our DIY camper adventure mobile van.
Camper / investigation.
Investigatorio mobile.
/ equipment van.
Yeah.
/ gear go van bug out vehicle.
Because we do like to travel, and as much as we can get out and go and take pictures, which is always something we like to do, we try to get out and go see places and investigate places. Because not only do we do a podcast, we also get out and do paranormal investigations and cryptid research as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's fun because we're part of a couple of groups that actually go out and do that kind of thing. So it's always fun. But yeah, the van is something we use to do that with. It's set up like a camper van. So if we need to, we can stop and stay in it. And you can also check our Instagram. We do put lots of pictures up of our adventures.
Yes.
When we do. So, and photography is sort of a big thing in this household. So there you go. Very nice.
Well, it is.
Well, yes. I mean, we do. We take pictures all. Yeah, it's something. It started out, And here's a fun trivia fact for you. A long time ago, this podcast was originally called the Turquoise and Beef Jerky Roadshow.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Where we actually went around the Southwest looking for turquoise and beef jerky.
And weird, wacky stuff to go to.
And what we didn't realize was a lot of places that we went after the fact we found were really spooky, weird, creepy places. And people were like, why did you go there? And we were like, I don't know. It just seemed like the place to go. Because a lot of the places we'd look up, it just call to us and we would go.
And we would go to these places that you would find out later a certain paranormal show on, let's say, the Travel Channel spent weeks planning in advance to go to because it was so spooky.
Yeah, we'd just show up and go, this place feels kind of strange. Let's camp here.
Oh, let's pick up this haunted rock.
Let's show up in the middle of the night where we can't see anything at all and camp on the edge of a precipice. Say that with me. Precipice.
Precipice.
Yeah, not you. I'm talking about the people in the cars right
I
now
know, but I can say it.
We're driving down the road going, precipice, looking all weird. So, yeah, anyway, so we kind of started that way, and we were going to do like a little podcast talking about some of our adventures because we seemed like we ran into weird people all the time. It was pretty synchronous, the entire thing. But later on, we changed it to CreepGeeks.
Yeah. Because
it made more sense, because we actually have another channel that you can watch and or listen to. It's called
Cheap Geek.
Cheap Geek. And if you find that on Facebook, people share all sorts of funny stuff there. It's a good place to be. All of it's workplace safe and family friendly. So if you want to go check out some funny things and maybe join into one of the 36 or 7,000 plus people who've liked the page, you can be one of them as well. Yeah. And so, and going back to the podcast story, we changed it from Turquoise and Beef Jerky Roadshow to the Cheap Geek Podcast. And what we realized is that Cheap Geek didn't make any sense for the weird stuff, the paranormal stuff and the wacky stuff that we were doing. So we changed it to CreepGeeks.
It's 72,000 followers now for Cheap Geek. I just wanted to let you know that.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know what page or where I'm looking at.
That is, you have 35,000 active engaging people. That's what you're looking at.
Nice. I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Yes,
so we have 70. Okay, so I was wrong. We have 72,000+ people
checking out the Cheap Geek. Facebook.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy sauce.
You should really change your featured video, by the way.
I don't even know what it is. I can't remember. Oh, I do know what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a Father's Day video when we were at Echo Canyon. No, what is the name of that place?
It's Echo Amphitheater.
Echo Amphitheater.
Which has a very rich paranormal history.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
The amphitheater has a large swath of what could be basically seen as blood that runs down the face of it, where allegedly I think it was either natives or a Spanish family was executed there.
It was either two warring native tribes, or it was natives versus, like, pioneers.
Yeah.
So,
And they were executed there, and their blood ran down and soaked the outside, and you can hear their screams in
you
the
can
echoes.
also hear them walking through the campground because it has a campground there.
Yes.
Which has mysteriously caught on fire twice in the past decade.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, more than that, 3 times.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
One of the times we went, it was on fire. It was unusual. Anyway.
Yeah, it just got done burning.
Yeah, and that video was basically me talking to the amphitheater, so I thought it was pretty funny. It was like, hello, shut the door, the air conditioner's on. It was like 1,000 degrees. So, yeah, anyway, I thought it was pretty funny. But see, and that's just one of those places that we magically showed up to because it seemed like the place to go to, and that's exactly what we did. And it's like, oh, wow, look at this rich paranormal history. Because there's very few places that we went in the Southwest that didn't have some sort of weirdness attached to it.
Yeah.
And the places that weren't weird, we didn't go to. They didn't draw us. Very strange.
Yeah, actually.
It's almost like we were magnates to that kind of stuff.
I think there's only like 2 locations we didn't hit up. But hey, if you want, those 2 locations have been investigated by every single paranormal team on television and YouTube. So.
And the difference is that we don't have television, so we didn't even know. We were just showing up. Well, that looks nice. Let's go there.
We have Hulu and Netflix.
Well, we were streaming. We cut the cord in 2008.
Yeah.
Back before all you suckers did.
So we're hipsters. We're anti-cable hipsters.
No, we're actually cheap geeks that decided we can use our advanced streaming technology to watch shows, and we didn't need to pay the exorbitant cable bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We did it back in the day before it was cool. When you'd fire up your streaming device and see exactly one channel, Netflix. You're like, ooh, this is great. I wonder what's on Netflix today. And then, like, shortly thereafter, it was Hulu. And then more and more channels started to get added. And it was kind of a thing. It was sort of the pioneering days. We had to use a device like Roku to actually log on, and where you could create your own channel for Roku. And you see all sorts of almost like community access television channels.
Which I still think we should do.
Yeah. Like in Ghostbusters, and Bill Murray had his little community access channel. But anyway. So, and there's a little history about us. Yeah. So anyway, if you've been listening for the very first time, and you're like, what are these guys even going to talk about? When are they going to start? The podcast has started. It begins right now.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, we like to start off each podcast with a little bit of an interesting random factoid. And this one's a little bit of a long one. And it ties in to everything else we're going to talk about. Are you ready?
Yeah, because I need you to go into this one. I'm like,
I know,
wait.
it's kind of long.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I did the disclaimer that it's kind of long. So this interesting random factoid is the most contaminated. I see, I've already wrecked it. The most contaminated area on Earth is actually the last place people suspected.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Okay, this is the Soviet Union, and this is back in a time when the Soviet Union was full of secrets, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the secrets that they had basically revolved around the Cold War.
Okay.
And the Cold War was all about, aside from all the saber rattling and stuff, it's building up nuclear arms, the arms race, that kind of thing. And so what had happened was, in the Soviet Union during that time, they created secret invisible cities.
Oh.
And this was, they were super communist back then. And, it was a communist country, so things like the stores would be maybe not full of products that you could get to easily. They were always rationing, and they had certain limits, and since they're communist and everybody works together, really socialist, that kind of thing. You didn't have the same sort of luxuries that we take for granted in the United States.
Or freedoms.
Or freedoms. So,
or access. Access is
yeah.
one.
So, while the Iron Curtain was up, most people were kept in the dark. But they created these cities, these invisible cities, and they were, they weren't really well known to anybody at all, even the residents of the countries that made up some of these cities that were part of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get some people to, or, like regular citizens to go work in these cities, they had to offer them things, like the stores would be fully stocked. You could get all the meat you wanted. Toilet paper wasn't rationed, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And one of these cities was, and it just had a number for a name, city number 40.
Oh.
Yeah. And so city number 40, which is now known as Ozyorsk, I cannot pronounce names at all. So if you ever listen to the podcast, it's not on purpose.
We're really bad at that.
Yeah, it's spelled Ozyorsk. And basically it sits near a lake just south of Yekaterinburg. I don't know, which is basically, it's that city was...
Yekaterinburg.
Yeah, that sounds good. That city was kind of off in the woods, so to speak. It was in sort of in the middle of a forest, so city number 40 was out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks nice from a distance.
Well, it all looks... It doesn't look nice from a distance. It looks like the projects. But
it looks
anyway,
like
it was
old
nice for
Norfolk. That's what it looks
no,
like to
it
me.
looks like if the government, and we're going to use the government, I like to compare things too. It looks like if the city or the municipal government, like say DMV, had to build a community. And DMV is Department of Motor Vehicles, or it might be Motor Vehicle Department, wherever you're from. Whatever. But anyway, the city was there. It's next to a lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the residents of the city number 40, or city 40, they got apartments, health care, other privileges that the rest of the country couldn't get. These were like benefits, right?
Yeah.
The grocery stores were always stocked. But see, like anything, it came with a price. So all those perks, man, came with a price. And they lived in a closed city. No way in or out, You had to be, it was well guarded, heavily fortified. You could get shot for entering, get shot for leaving. It was highly controlled, right?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And during that time, the Cold War was ramping up, and the Soviet Union, definitely didn't want to fall behind the United States, because losing out in the arms race could be a death sentence for the nation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So politicians took action, and they created city number 40. City number 40, they were there to power the war effort. Excuse me. And that war effort is, for them, consisted of processing plutonium.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so they processed plutonium for nuclear weapons, and that's just bad enough as it is, but it was even worse behind the scenes, because after the plutonium was processed, the byproduct is nuclear waste.
Yeah,
which is a massive safety hazard, of course, and the authorities weren't disposing of that waste properly. So they were under the gun, so to speak, to create these plutonium, enrich the plutonium, and they had to get rid of some of the waste, or get rid of the waste. So
they had no waste disposal policies.
Well, they did. They just weren't following them. See, because I'll tell you a little secret about the Soviet Union, or actually now Russia. They are the worst nuclear polluters on the planet, period.
Really?
Absolutely. I mean, just in the past 3 months, I think, they've had nuclear incidents.
Okay.
They have a sunken Russian submarine that's been leaking high levels of radiation.
Yeah.
Right? They have another event that we're going to talk about, and they had something that happened before that.
Oh, and then
the Kursk went down, and it's it's not leaking active radiation yet, but it's going to.
Earlier this summer, all the Instagrammers were going to Chernobyl.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like, why would you, anyway, like that little hazmat suit that you wear is going to protect you from radiation exposure. I don't think so. Plus, they got caught dumping their fission rods that come from these spent nuclear reactor rods, if you will, the ones that they lower down in the movies and turns the water blue, which is a real thing, by the way.
Mm.
Just dumping them in the deepest parts of the ocean they could find, up around the Arctic. They're the worst, man. And, and we're not talking just the accidents that other countries have, which put them on the radar for being some of the worst. They're just the worst. But anyway, they were just disposing of this nuclear waste just wherever they could.
Yeah.
And so, of course, exposure to radiation can have all sorts of side effects like, immediate radiation sickness, long-term cancers, all that sort of stuff. So since that factory, that plant that they were all working at, which was designed to enrich the plutonium, was in a closed city, the authorities could do pretty much whatever they wanted.
Oh, gosh.
And since the outside world didn't even know they existed because it's an invisible city deep in the forest, they had no idea. And they didn't know that the people there were being poisoned, right? So over the plant's lifespan, it's been estimated that the amount of contamination released was 2 to 3 times larger than Chernobyl.
But is this city still open? Because Chernobyl's closed. I mean,
no, the city's not still open, but this is what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
So 2 to 3 times larger than Chernobyl. Now here's what gets really kind of terrible, right?
Yeah.
City number 40 was built alongside the Techa River, right? And that felt pretty much the brunt of the dumping. They were dumping the waste in that river. So that river and its surroundings are still radioactive.
And that's got to take all that pollution downstream or elsewhere.
It does, and it carried it to a large, another spot. Because the river runs into this lake, I think it's called Karachi.
Oh my gosh, this lake looks like a... Okay, so this lake looks like a lake in New Mexico that's also polluted.
Yeah, kind of. So it runs into a lake. So the river dumps into the lake, which is a perfect place to deposit all this radiation and pollution, right? You wouldn't want to go swimming there because if you dipped a toe in that radioactive water, it'd probably kill you.
Yeah.
Maybe not right away, but... So it's an ordinary-looking lake. It's an ordinary-looking lake, but it's one of the most contaminated spots in the entire world. Guess what it's known as?
What?
Lake of Death.
Of course.
Yeah. The body of water at one time was reportedly twice as radioactive as the heart of Chernobyl.
That is so bad.
I think the reactor core that's slowly burning its way to the center of the Earth. Twice as hot as that.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So the pollution and the radiation was so deadly that the Russian government basically finally took steps to contain it. The lake was filled with concrete blocks and eventually covered with layers and layers of rocks and dirt, basically turning it into a permanent waste storage facility.
Oh, my gosh.
So the old, just put some dirt on it. That's exactly what they did. So they filled it in with cement blocks, rocks, and dirt. And there's still some people that live there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it says, despite all the hazards, some people still call the Orzagras home. And the passing of time and all sorts of health risks simply can't overpower the pull that keeps them anchored to the former City 40.
So crazy.
Yeah, it's still technically a closed city. So, yeah. But see, here's the thing, though. It's still technically a closed city. It would make it hard for your resident to leave, right? Because not only would they be leaving everything behind that the government actually provides for them, but they could never return to the area.
At all.
Yeah, no. Because, see, once they leave that, they're never going to be able to go back in because the radiation is so high.
I wonder if that's mutated their genetics to
Probably.
like if they left the radiation, they'd die. Who
knows?
That's a cool theory, but I'm just rolling with that.
I don't know if that's cool or not.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically a simple reality, right? Even in a contaminated city that was kept off the map for decades, there's no place like home. I mean, people just, that's where they grew up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty crazy. And like they had an incident in 1986 where number 4 reactor at Chernobyl went down, right? That's when Chernobyl, the nuclear power plant, basically did its thing. It exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it exploded during a routine safety test, and radioactive contaminants spread tens of thousands of miles across Eastern Europe. God. And, this stuff takes a long time to degrade. So radioactive fallout, it's going to be unsafe for humans to live there and animals, even, hundreds of thousands of years. It's going to take for that stuff to degrade. So as a result, a 1,000 square mile Chernobyl exclusion zone was created to discourage people from going. But that's not going to keep some goofball YouTubers from going.
And Instagram.
Yeah.
Brand ambassadors or whatever.
It's kind of crazy. So, yeah. So most of the people left, right, and complied with that restriction. But there's been a handful of lifelong residents that stayed put. Despite of the further radiation.
Oh, my gosh.
They live there.
So
and of course, this article we're looking at shows this crusty old woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was looking,
completely abandoned this place. So
it talks a little bit about that 1,000 square mile exclusion zone for Chernobyl. And just out of curiosity, I was like, how large is that? Because Russia is big.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. I think it's like it's either that or China is the largest country on the planet. I don't know.
China is. China's the largest, but Russia's pretty big. And 1,000 square mile exclusion zone. Imagine exclusion zone the size of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
that's pretty
Rhode
big.
Island's not very big.
I know, but, because we live in the United States.
Yeah.
So we're like, but this is one country that can actually set a whole state aside and say, nobody is allowed in this state,
Yeah.
That's
It's kind of crazy when you look at Chernobyl, right?
Yeah.
Because since the people basically left, and a lot of they couldn't take their pets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So along with stray pets, the exclusion zone has seen a dramatic increase in the number of wild animals in the area. So like descendants of the people's pets that they left behind are still there. And they kept making
Beautiful
more pets.
horses.
Yeah. So basically the increase in the wild animals contains things like elk, deer, foxes, bisons, even the brown bear. The European brown bear, which was a species that hadn't been seen in that region for nearly a century, has been spotted in the zone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is a weird looking fox.
And they got wild horses, like you were saying. They're a rare breed I can't pronounce. And there's been a pretty steady increase because there's no human there, so no real human population.
Yeah.
And so these things can just do what they want.
These wolves are out of control.
Yep. So the wolves are the most prevalent species in the exclusion zone. And the good news is that they're all radioactive. So they're all radioactive wolves.
But recent studies by biologists and zoologists have started to, come to some conclusions, like the radiation, especially on the canines or canids, like wolves and some of the dogs, may not affect them as severely as it does humans. Which is why earlier this year, if you were on Facebook or social media, you may have actually seen ads about adopting dogs out of Chernobyl.
Yeah.
But the wolves, due to their large range, like their migratory range, the effects aren't hitting them as bad.
If you think about it, and the amount of little wolves that are grown, like litters and stuff like that, I think it has tendency to either breed in some kind of resistance to it or the ability to become acclimated to it.
Yeah,
a lot faster than humans.
I will say this fox that's on this article, we put links in the show notes, but this fox looks like a dog hybrid to me.
Well, it looks like a regular.
Well, because look how strong its legs are.
Well, that's because foxes have long, skinny legs.
But that's just crazy.
But you're going to have effects like tumors, cataracts, albinism, other genetic disorders, all that sort of thing. And the insect world was rocked by the radiation as well. The spiders that reside in the exclusion zone can no longer spin geometrically perfect webs. And the lifespan of most bugs decreased due to a higher susceptibility to parasites. So it's not the radiation that's killing them. It's the bugs that eat the bugs that's killing them.
Oh, but those spiders, those poor spiders. I mean, because that's like one of nature's wonderful mysteries and marvels is the fact that spiders spin these perfect webs.
Well, yeah.
Except for these guys.
Except when they've been contaminated by radiation.
I know.
So anyway, that's our interesting random factoid for today.
It's terrible.
Yeah. So on that note, you're listening to CreepGeeks Podcast. We're going to take a second and take a break, and we'll be right back.
A podcast about curses, hexes, and maledictions. Cursed examines some of the most bizarre and mysterious events that have been documented throughout history. Whether it's regarding tales of voodoo, black magic, or simply a series of unfortunate events, I'll be telling you all kinds of strange tales. 3 episodes are readily available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and other popular apps. These episodes cover tales and stories from Manchac Swamp, the alleged curse of Ötzi the Iceman, and a story involving the Australian international soccer team and a scorned witch doctor. You can find out more about the show by visiting curse.com. That's C-V like voodoo, R-S-E-D.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Cursed Podcast. Again, that's C-V like voodoo, R-S-E-D podcast. Hope to see you around. Thanks for listening.
Hey CreepGeeks fans, this is Toby Harford of Afterlife Paranormal. Join us October 5th for Carolina Paracon at the beautiful Saluda Shoals Park in Columbia, South Carolina. We have ghost hunting teams, cryptozoologists, and alien contactees, including Katie Stafford from Travel Channel's Ghosts of Morgan City, Psychic Lucky Belcamino, the Bigfoot Guys, alien contactee Eric Mitchell, demonologist James Anito, the CreepGeeks Podcast, and many more. We'll have 25 plus vendors, lectures on all paranormal topics, a psychic gallery reading, and a paranormal panel. Tickets are on sale now, and if you purchase before September 1st, you will be entered to win a ghost hunting kit and Carolina Paracon t-shirt. Find us on Facebook at Carolina Paracon. We hope to see you there.
And we're back.
Yep.
So thanks for sticking with us in the old Creep Geeks podcast. Hope you enjoyed our interesting random factoid about the most contaminated place on the planet. Yeah. And the Lake of Death. So speaking of that, we're going to get back into talking about nuclear explosions in Russia before we talk about something relatively sad.
Yeah.
Which is more of a PSA. So we talked a little bit about some of the Russian incidents that have happened or occurred. We just glossed over them because that's kind of what we do. But this has been something that's been in the news recently. Slight conspiracy behind it. So the article I'm going to read in brief detail, it comes from NBC News. It says, failed Russian nuclear test hints at Putin's dangerous plans to beat the U.S. defenses.
That is a little frightening.
Yeah. So here's the phrase, right? It says, is it dangerous? Yes, with an exclamation point. I think the phrase flying nuclear reactor tells you all you need to know.
Oh, you mean like the old, like, Nazi Germany plans for, like, flying saucers?
No.
Powered by some sort of weird whatever?
Like a Mercury engine that rotated with some... No.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a little bit different. Okay, so basically they were trying to create, or may have be testing, or may have exploded during a test, because again, all this is speculation, a like hypersonic cruise missile.
Oh.
That could basically fly anywhere on the planet because of the nuclear power supply. It's refueling the rocket. They fly at hypersonic speeds. I don't know, like 5,000 miles an hour or something crazy like that, right?
Okay.
So the theory is that there was an explosion that was not caused by what they said, which was that basically a nuclear reactor exploded like a plant or something like that. Because the details were pretty sketchy at the time.
Yeah.
Actually, it's still pretty sketchy. It's more than likely a Russian nuclear-powered missile test that went wrong. So basically, it exploded during the test for whatever was happening. Who knows? Like what the actual cause of the explosion was. But if Moscow is pursuing the same dangerous technology that we already have, or allegedly have, or they think we have, that's not good, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah. So 5 scientists were actually killed, and radiation spiked in a nearby city, following the blast at an offshore platform in the Russian Arctic Circle, or in the Russian Arctic, I should say. This was like last Thursday.
See, that's how big Russia is. It's like in the Arctic.
Well, so are we. We have this thing called Alaska. Fun fact, I actually sailed above the Arctic Circle to go to Russia, where we spent, I think it was 14 days in Russia.
Is that the coldest you've ever been?
No.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it was super cold, but it was the springtime. It wasn't like, the full-blown, you could walk across the ocean kind of thing, but it was still cold. It was the Arctic Circle, but I mean, it was kind of weird. But anyway, I mean, it was a fun time. The people there were pretty nice, all things considered. But so don't really know what's going on. So 5 scientists were killed. Radiation spiked in the city, following the blast that happened from the Arctic. And the authorities have been drip feeding details to the, of the incident to the public, right?
Yeah.
But they basically confirmed at the time of the blast that nuclear scientists at the Nanyuska military range were working on a small-sized energy source using radioactive fissile materials. Fissile. Yeah, you say that right. And here's another factual morsel. It says Russia's State Nuclear Agency said the accident occurred or happened while testing the isotope power sources within a liquid propulsion system.
Okay. That's
so
still
with that
pretty
vague warning, right? Or vague technical wording, it's like they were more than likely testing the same experimental weapon that Russian President Vladimir Putin announced in March of 2018. he revealed that Russia was developing a cruise missile with an unlimited range that could carry a nuclear weapon to any point on the globe.
That's still kind of scary.
That was very scary. Especially if they can't, if it's going to blow up and irradiate you from wherever. I mean, it's not good news. So, of course, President Donald Trump, he did a little tweet, as he does. It basically says, has people worried about the air around the facility and far beyond, not good. And he also talked in a recent tweet that they were trying to match our technology. And he says our more advanced technology. In other words, saying that we have technology that's more advanced than what they were trying to do.
I just don't want another Cold War.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And so, well, we already have one.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing. We've stopped, relatively speaking, worrying, or we've stopped a while ago. It's sort of ramped back up again, worrying about the Cold War. But now that China has really got more powerful, Russia never really stopped with the whole Cold War thing. It's sort of coming back in vogue, if you will. So, yeah. So, and the explosion came days after the U.S. scrapped the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty because Russia had violated the pact banning ground-based nuclear weapons of a certain range. So the new Strategic Arm Reduction Treaty, which limits long-range nuclear powers, is set to expire to limit long-range nuclear weapons, is supposed to expire at around 2021 in February, unless it's been renewed. So they kind of keep going, right? And this arms race that's been happening without us actively seem like we're not actively participating in it is something we need to be aware of. And if they're trying to see, here's the real problem that I have. A couple different things. Number one, long-range nuclear weapons that can go around the globe, hit you anywhere on the planet, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
Number two, the easiest thing to do is to create a weapon that doesn't even have a nuclear payload or nuclear propulsion system and generate a EM pulse, I guess.
Yeah.
And that would basically take out a lot of industrialized countries because of the electromagnetic pulse that would happen, and it makes electronics, useless. Some useless forever, some useless for a certain period of time. There's things that need to be hardened against EMF. So, if the weapon is using, if the exploded Russian weapon is using nuclear fuel for propulsion, that's terrible. But what if it's using nuclear fuel in conjunction with a small nuclear warhead to create the EM pulse? That's bad.
Yeah.
It's not good.
No.
So, if it did blow up, I'm glad it did. And I hope it sets them back about 20 years. And I hope that, that China, if they're doing the same thing, I hope that, all of that sort of thing, because just goes away. But I don't think it will. I mean, who knows? Who knows exactly what's going to go on with that sort of thing. But that's our real biggest threat. Everybody worries about nuclear war. Nuclear war is the last resort, and most countries don't want nuclear war. The easiest thing to do, EM pulse, take out the country's infrastructure, and just let it die on its own.
Huh.
Problem solved. So, and, it's the Russians and their weapons. Yeah, it still goes back to where they built multiples of the same thing because they that way didn't have to worry about if one was going to do it or not. Because a lot of their weapons just didn't work.
Yeah.
So if you're unsure of the reliability of your armament or armaments, like your weapons, you build like 5 or 6. You know what I mean? So.
But that's 5 or 6 basically dirty weapons. I mean, an EMP.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though. Half of those wouldn't even work.
Yeah.
So.
Or they're going to backfire in some horrible consequence.
And explode on an offshore,
and kill
platform and
5 scientists.
Yeah, exactly.
So. I mean, and I think it's that threat of a dirty, nasty end.
Yeah,
that
and plus
scares people.
And their whole nuclear cleanup and nuclear accident history has not been good.
Whereas, yes, this is terrifying, but to enact something like an EMP pulse, which would be much more effective.
Oh yeah.
I mean, why aren't we on the radar for that?
Who says we're not?
Okay. And that's the thing. I mean, how much do we have to be worried about?
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't think you can harden, I mean, you can't put everything in a Faraday cage. I don't know. I have no idea. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's things that you can do.
Yeah.
To harden, but you can't harden an entire infrastructure. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not an expert in any of this by any means. I mean, see, because here's the problem with it. The more you start looking into something like this to see, like, what could you do to protect yourself against EMP pulse or whatever? What could the country do? The deeper you go down a rabbit hole, the more and more you realize it's just not good. To put it, I mean, it's just like, wow.
Or you
I think it'd be impossible to.
In an underground bunker in an undisclosed location.
Well, when they ran all the simulations and all the eggheads got together in the 50s after the nuclear arms race really kind of started, after the testing, and so you figure late 40s into the 50s and on, when they're doing all these nuclear tests and stuff like that, what they realized was through all their simulations that the only way to survive any of this is to be underground. And so that started the whole, let's build these big, giant, deep underground military bases, you know. I mean, there were a bunch left over from World War II because it made sense to put bases underground because they were less susceptible to be destroyed from airstrike. Yeah. And other countries just started doing it.
And like that's
and started building on it. You know, every country has underground military bases.
In fact, if you go on Reddit, there's a really good subreddit for Russian underground bases. Yeah. Because a lot of them are either forgotten about or they're found accidentally. Yeah. Or people rent an apartment and find out 2 years into renting it, it leads to an underground base that's been abandoned. Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of places. So, yeah. You know, and so with this whole missile, if it did explode, if it did exist, you know, and they're calling it the SSE X9 Skyfall. So if it was completed and worked, it would be nuclear armed, but it could be and would be nuclear powered. Carry a really small reactor to heat the air up in its jet engine. And so it'd fly lower and on a less predictable trajectory than an intercontinental ballistic missile, making it theoretically capable of evading U.S. missile defenses. And when he did a presentation, Putin was like, you can see how the missile bypasses interceptors, you know, showing a computer-generated video of the rocket. And he said, as the range is unlimited, the missile can maneuver for as long as necessary. As you no doubt understand, no other country has developed anything like this, and there will be something similar one day, but by that time, our guys will have come up with something even better. And so Trump basically said on Twitter that the U.S. has similar, though more advanced technology. And you know what else we have, Russia? We have frickin' lasers. We do. We have lasers, and we're putting lasers on all of our Navy ships. Come on, let's not call out Russia.
Hey.
What?
Lasers.
Stop it.
Got frickin' lasers.
Paranormal, not politic podcast.
Hey, this is part of it, man. Because, I mean, how many... Think about... Okay, let's tie it back to paranormal.
Okay.
And UFO stuff. How many UFO sightings have actually been test or military test vehicles? Or missile firings?
We have no idea.
Most of them.
Okay.
Honestly, I would say that most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, look at things like the Blackbird. You know, every time that thing flying around with supersonic booms and stuff like that, people are like, what is that? That thing was the fastest flying aircraft in the world for a long time. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say we don't have aircraft that can leave the atmosphere or go suborbital, fly around for space for a while and come back down again? And there's been all sorts of, like, you know, projects like Aurora and things like that where basically, you know, they don't exist, but they really do exist. Who knows? And I'm sure, like, here's what I think. If it's cigar-shaped, it's man-made. If it's triangular-shaped, it's man-made. If it's a bunch of lights that fly together in a synchronous pattern and then fly apart and come back together, that's drone technology. It's man-made.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of, if not 80% of what we see as far as UFO stuff is man-made / government-made. Straight up. Because if you look at our advancement from the end of, say, World War II, right?
Yeah.
To now, the amount of advancements we've had don't make sense if you look back to the previous sort of progression that humankind has had, right? It's grown exponentially. I mean, World War II was basically you went from, let's look at World War I, like in 1909 or so, up to about 1940. They were still using biplanes.
Yeah.
They just barely got out of the Orville Wilbur Wright sort of flying around thing. So, I mean, at the end of World War II, they had V-2 rockets. And so technology, and so if you keep that same level of progression of advancement from, let's just say 1950 to 2019, that's 69 years. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, you had the U-2 flying spy plane flying around, doing his business, and then not even, I think it's really short distance, like not even 8 years later, from the time that thing started flying around in the 50s, they were working on the SR-71 Blackbird, which was the most advanced aircraft in the world when that thing came out.
Yeah.
And so not even 12 years later, you got the SR-71 Blackbird could fly higher, faster, and farther than any other plane on the planet. There's such a short development phase in between here and there.
And what helped that development?
Cold War.
Anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
Cold War. I mean, you can say UFOs and, captured alien technology has been sort of pulled apart and re-engineered or reverse engineered or even back engineered, but can't really say for sure. I don't know. But, probably what really helped us the most with a lot of our sort of rocket technologies and all that sort of thing was the Operation Paperclip scientists that we stole from Germany. Kind of gave them a choice. You're either going to be tried or killed for being a war criminal, or you can come work for us. That's what they did. So, no, it's true. It's absolutely true.
I know.
So, there you go. But, yeah, it's not good. This is the explosion that happened. Yeah. But I do like President Trump basically saying, we got better technology. Well, it's basically tit for tat with this kind of thing.
Oh, and there's a
Think
quote.
of it like a mini Chernobyl on a missile. Isn't that nice?
There is a quote, though, in this article from New Mexico. And this is Cheryl Roffer, a retired chemist from Los Alamos National Laboratory, the birthplace of the atomic bomb in New Mexico, believes Putin will never succeed. There are basic and fundamental engineering considerations that suggest a nuclear-powered cruise missile with a very small power source will be difficult or impossible to build. And she wrote that on the Nuclear Diner website.
Okay, so two things.
Yeah.
She might be wrong. And the second thing is there's a Nuclear Diner website.
That's a very New Mexico blog.
Nice.
It is a blog.
Of course it is. So that's kind of nutty. But, I think I don't know. I mean, she, of course, would probably know more about the nuclear stuff than anybody listening to our particular podcast. But you really can't discount military technology.
I think she's discounting Russia's military technology.
Yeah, but I mean, who's,
They have a lot of pride in Los Alamos.
Well, they do.
So
they do. And so do the Russians. They are very prideful. So,
yeah.
I don't know. And, who knows? But see, they've been using nuclear technology in a lot of ways more frequently, there's more instances of things that are, I guess, nuclear powered in Russia than there are in the U.S. for sure. Because, I mean, they're just where they are. Anyway, the principal ship of the Russian Navy is still the submarine. And a lot of those, I think well over half, and maybe even more, well, last time I knew, it was more than that, all nuclear powered. And they have more submarines, nuclear-powered submarines, than we have ships in our Navy. Yeah, it's kind of nutty, right? So, who knows? Yep. But I like the way she says, is it dangerous? Yes. I think the phrase, flying nuclear reactor tells you all you need to know. You've got air blowing back through an open nuclear reactor spewing out of the back, which is what's causing the propulsion, I guess. So, yeah. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So there you go, Russia. Good job. Blowing stuff up. Taking people out. Creating radioactive wolves. Hypersonic missiles. Invisible cities. Lakes of death. It's not good. Speaking of not good, this has been in the news here recently, and I've seen 4 instances so far. If you have a pet, you should take heed. So toxic algae has been killing dogs.
Sadly. And this started in the news.
Well, let's film what kind of algae it is first.
Yeah, this started in the news this week, and it's gotten worse. Toxic blue-green algae. It's unfortunately collecting in slow-moving bodies of water or lakes and things like that. And the buildup due to, I guess, the weather season we're having this year is causing it to basically...
warm weather, lots of rain, it blooms, it grows.
It's causing the blooms to get out of control. So now these bodies of water are full of toxic blue-green algae. And it ranges anywhere from simple small ponds or lakes to like those manufactured ponds you see in nice neighborhoods.
Yeah.
You know, those ponds that you walk your kids and your dogs to.
Yeah.
And
I like to call those fake lakes.
Yeah, fake lakes for McMansions, you know, that type of thing.
Or communities where they basically dig a hole and put trash bag thick stuff like plastic liners and fill it full of water, and poof, it creates a lake. And a lot of them are aerated, but they're not aerated enough. So
now, sadly, this couple, Melissa Martin and Denise Mintz, they took their 3 dogs to a pond in Wilmington, North Carolina last Thursday to throw the ball around and play. Now, Martin said their 2 West Highland Terriers, Abby and Izzy, stayed on the water's edge, but their doodle mix Harpo saw another dog splashing around and got in. The water appeared clear, and there weren't any signs indicating the water could be dangerous. However, when they got home, things took a turn. Martin said she took Harpo upstairs for a bath when Mincy yelled for her that something was wrong with Abby. Remember, Harpo was the one who actually got in the water.
Yeah.
So she took a look, and she sees Abby is seizing. They put the dog in the car and rushed her to the veterinarian, but things got worse. She's foaming at the mouth. She was hot to touch. Martin said the vet asked if Abby had been near water. When she was told that her other dogs needed to come in too, Martin called Mintz, only to find out that Izzy was experiencing the same symptoms. Then when Harpo arrived at the vet, he also began showing symptoms. The dogs were brought to the ICU, but none of them improved. Unfortunately, they all passed away on Friday. And they sat there in shock because...
Yeah, it's quick.
It was so quick. The blue-green algae sickened the dogs, causing their livers to shut down, which would also lead to internal bleeding, unfortunately. Blue-green algae is a type of bacteria that blooms in warm, nutrient-rich ponds and lakes and can harm pets and humans.
Yes.
The cyanobacteria produces cyanotoxins that can be harmful when swallowed, breathed in, or in contact with the skin, according to the pollution agency. Now, what's really unfortunate and scary is, as Martin says, that water was completely clear. You can't even see it unless you know exactly what you're looking for. And does state that Martin feels there should have been signs at the pond indicating the harmful bacteria is present. She says she's been back there since then, saw father and son fishing. I guess she wants to share her awareness of the issue because she lost... I read the other story, which is 2 of the dogs were certified full-service dogs and therapy dogs, and the other one was going to be.
Yeah.
She was writing a book. The dogs were going to get featured possibly on television shows. And the dogs were very popular on social media. So it is a terrible loss.
Yeah.
And now, if you look in the news, sadly, there's a lot of information out there about this blue-green algae. It's just due to the weather. It's killed not just these 3 dogs, but at least 2 more?
Yeah. Last check that I've seen, and I think these were all in North Carolina. It was
and
4.
3 dogs in Austin, Texas.
Okay. So it just keeps getting worse. And it's not just the blue-green algae, it's also the red algae as well. And from what I remember back to my elementary, actually junior high school science days, when you add a lot of fresh water and warm conditions and you don't have a lot of movement in the water, a lot of drainage, that kind of thing, it can cause this where you've had, like, I remember one time the Chesapeake Bay when we were living in Virginia was covered in red algae. It was just red. Yeah. And it had warnings, stay out of the water and all that stuff. And primarily it was caused, if I remember correctly, by multiple weather systems coming in and dumping tons of rain in the area, and all of the runoff, from cities and towns and stuff all around the Chesapeake Bay, like 25 miles roughly of the Chesapeake Bay.
Oh, I know about this.
All just draining into the bay and not being drawn out because it's a bay. So it's not like that water gets completely 100% recycled. And so, I mean, it can happen. So the warning for us is we're not taking our dogs unless it's like a river, like a running river, like a fast-moving creek, not touching it, not going in it.
Yeah.
And in our last podcast, we talk about a brain-eating amoeba. It's in the same sort of conditions, right? Warm.
And it's so severe
water.
that the California Department of Health is issuing an official notice, like a health notice. They've posted it on their Twitter. They've posted it on websites. California is even going so far as to talk about it on all local news and stuff like that.
Yeah.
About both because I guess last year California had 18 dog deaths.
Yeah.
Sadly. And their scientists, as well as scientists in Texas, have noticed that these blue-green algae blooms are happening so far as south as like Houston and as far north as Klamath, Oregon.
Yeah.
So it's not just here in North Carolina. I don't care if you hike with your dog, if you could take your dog on walks, you go to parks, you go to anywhere with a body of water. Just keep an eye on your dog. Don't let it near the water.
Yeah. I don't think I'd let it swim in the ocean right now unless it was like actual ocean and not a bay.
And then you got to worry about a tide, so the current,
Well, we always have to worry about that. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
But
so everything from brain-eating amoebas to blue-green algae and red tide.
And here's a tip.
Not good. I can't wait for fall, man. I can't wait for the winter time.
A tip, if you live in an area where the temperatures have been consistently spiking on random days above 90 degrees, your area has an ideal condition for that bacteria to grow.
Yep.
So
it has to be really warm.
Yeah, me and Pepper, we usually go for a walk near the creek. We've been skipping it.
Yep.
So
well, you don't have to skip it, just don't go in.
Oh, no, because last week she tried to drink from the creek, and I don't want her drinking from that for other reasons. So, because it just looks gross. So.
Yeah, drinking water out of the earth like an animal.
No, because we have cows near there.
Gross.
Oh.
Animals just crapping in the water.
That's why I don't want her.
So.
And that's the other thing, I mean, if it's a creek next to a farm and there's a lot of farm animals, that could cause it too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Not good.
No creek water, Pepper. So.
Well, speaking of human-animal hybrids.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so we had this in the podcast, actually 2 podcast episodes ago. We were going to talk about it, and we decided not to. Mm-hmm. For whatever reasons. I don't remember what they were, so it's not important. But are you ready for human-monkey hybrids?
No.
How about a human-rat?
No.
How about a human-mouse combination?
No.
Can you accept the justification given by scientists and government officials giving their approval that it's for a noble cause?
No.
That maybe you need some much-needed human transplant organs, and that basically you can can grow them, and
That's
that
like
no
that...
actual hybrid creature will be brought to full development.
That's like that ear that they put on a rat.
Yeah,
like
that was a while ago. Yeah. Anyway, so it appears that human rats are being created in Japan, and human monkeys are being created in China.
I have a problem with the human monkey thing.
I have a problem with it all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like Island of Dr. Monroe. It had Marlon Brando in it at one time. It was a terrible movie.
Moreau.
But anyway, is it Moreau?
Moreau.
It is Moreau.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
M-O-R.
Doesn't matter. I don't want it.
You.
Yeah. So they're trying to justify it by saying, "Hey, we can grow some human transplant organs. So let's start with a human monkey hybrid."
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was genetically modified monkey embryos, right? They use these genetically modified. That should be a word.
Genetified.
Write that down. Genetified. Genetically modified monkey embryos to deactivate the genes that create organs. Then they injected them with human stem cells that generated human organs instead. Now, when I read this, because I was looking, of course I'm going to read this, right? I'm like, oh. Remember when we talked about the human-pig hybrids?
Yeah.
In 2017? The same team
that
made the human-pig hybrids are making these. And it's Juan Carlos Esposito, I think his name. Esposito?
Yeah.
He works for the Salk Institute of the U.S. in conjunction with the Catholic University of Murcia in Spain. And so the research is done in China where the regulations against these experiments don't really exist. And they also prefer to call them human-monkey combinations, chimeras, because they're not half human and half monkey, but merely monkeys that are developing human organs. It really doesn't make it less creepy, right?
No, it
doesn't. It's still unethical, I would think. But anyway, it basically says, and here's how they kind of saying, hey, they destroy these embryos after 14 weeks to avoid more controversy.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, his human pig chimeras were ultimately unsuccessful, but this guy is confident it'll eventually work and be accepted by the general public. So what happens if they just go, oh, we forgot. 14 weeks is a long time. Well, what do you mean this one's 36 weeks? So they're injecting stem cells in these embryos to grow organs. And so, hey, history shows us time and time again that our ethical and moral scales change and mutate much like our DNA. And what was completely ethically unacceptable yesterday is maybe not necessarily going to be the case for the future, right? So there's going to be a breakthrough of progress of humanity. And today, that's an essential part of our lives.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Nope.
And that article was on Mysterious Universe. That was, I believe, put out there first week in August or something like that. So in Japan, they started doing something a little bit different, right? So they make these chimeras, and they can now be gestated to term. And recently gave approval to renowned geneticist Hiromishu Nakachui from the University of Tokyo to create the first ones using rats and mice. So the plan is to genetically modify fertilized eggs of rats and mice to deactivate them, or the genes that are in them, so they can make a pancreas, right? And then they're going to inject them with a human iPS, which is stem cell, into those eggs, place them in rats and mice, allowing them to be born, where their development can be monitored, and as a precautionary measure, they will examine the brains of the rodent embryos after they reach a certain stage of development, and in the experiment, if the number of human cells any occupies, those are the mice that they're going to be injected in, if the human cells occupies more than 30% of the rat's brain. And that would give the signal that the human cells are taking over, which is a situation that's considered unethical. But it's still legal. So they plan on creating things like livers and kidneys, a pancreas or two.
But
And here's what some of the things it's like. Okay, and so they're trying to assail the fears that, some people are like, hey man, the hybrids are going to be, they're like, no. The chances for living hybrids are nil. At that level, an animal with a human face will never be born.
Okay.
However, monkeys with human organs are already being recreated in China, where the restrictions are minimal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to see the Islands of Lost Soul, which is basically, from H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
Which turned into the Island of Dr. Moreau. Remember that?
Yeah.
So you don't have to see those movies to come to the conclusions that this guy, Jiro Nudashima, I think it's the guy, I'm not sure, who's a scientist specialist who basically co-heads a civic group. He's basically saying, you don't have to see this. It's problematic, both ethically and from the safety aspect, to place these human stem cells in there and to fertilize eggs. I mean, if they just don't...
And here's the thing. There's a risk that a certain body part unexpectedly becomes a chimera, a condition which heterologous cells exist in one body by mixing human cells into the brains or reproductive cells of rats or mice. And for me, right there, that makes those organs or those creatures susceptible to evolving and creating new things to kill us, like new diseases, new congenital defects, new congenital, hereditary diseases.
And you know what else?
What?
Planet of the Apes. This is how it starts.
No.
Yes. Remember how we talked about the theory that all these movies and basically works of fiction that people write and things like that are the possibility of, maybe having a dream, which is, you're just sort of absorbing something that happened in a mirror universe.
Yeah.
This is it.
And we've also talked about how some of these...
So somebody who thought about look at me, right? I don't know who wrote the Planet of the Apes, but they wrote this book, right? Mm-hmm. About how these human apes or these apes evolved and got smart. What if they just didn't know the whole thing? What if this is how it starts? What if it started with the good intention of let's grow a liver or a pancreas or two? Something happens, lightning strikes, right? And it doesn't get killed. And it sort of expedites the process. And next thing you know, boom, you got a smart ape.
Okay, the original
Planet of the Apes.
Les Planètes des Singes, I think it was a French novel.
Yes.
So, yeah, 1963. But no, we also talked about, though, how some of these great bodies of work, whether they're novels or comic books or even movies, might actually be conditioning us to make these things okay.
Yeah.
But in this particular instance, this whole Frankenstein thing, this whole Isle of Dr. Moreau thing,
Yeah.
we've been conditioned to not accept these things.
So far.
And I'm sorry, a majority of humans, whether
I don't know, man. If you're up there and they're like, hey, man, you need a new pancreas or you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have a pancreas.
It came out of a monkey.
Would you like it? And you're going to be like, yes.
I don't know.
They've already done with pig hearts and things like that to replace human hearts.
Yeah.
But this would be different because it's actually grown to be a human pancreas using the mouse or monkey as a vessel.
And I guess that is my personal
Now, here's the thing.
hang-ups
Since
about
some
animals.
countries are more ethical than others, and you have other countries like China, who doesn't seem to give a rat's ass.
Actually,
about
they
this
are.
kind of
They're
thing.
modifying a rat's
Well, yeah.
ass.
So, I mean, see, that's what happens, right? So if China doesn't care, and Japan has slightly more restricted measures in place to keep it from happening, and they're doing it, and the possibility of them being able to create, hey, let's create an animal soldier, right? A human sort of animal hybrid that could be smart enough to be a soldier, right? Mm-hmm. And there's even the hint of that, and then you're going to be so far behind. What are you going to do? I mean, you know what I mean? So that talks about the Cold War, right? You can't let one country get ahead of the other because the results could be dire. So what if China creates these monkey-human hybrids and starts using gorillas, right? And starts tweaking the genes and creates Bigfoot?
No. Absolutely not.
Here's the theory.
Nope.
What if, here's my theory, what if everything that we know, right, that we're experiencing right now and everything we think and know about cryptids and all that sort of thing, and everything that's happening, is basically happening now, and we think most of this has happened in the past, but it's really not. We're actually living our future, which is technically our past.
All right,
it's like
Sarah
a loop.
Connor.
Boom. Okay, first off, that would have absolutely nothing to do with what I just said, which is actually insulting, by the way. And you should apologize right now.
Nope.
Yeah. What does
This is
Sarah Connor have to do with No. We're living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, our now is technically our past. And it's going to get to a point where the human and the animals and everything on our planet and the earth resets itself, just like a reboot. And that's it. And that's where these, like Sasquatches, came from. They were actually genetically modified Chinese monkey men at the time of the reboot.
So how did they make it here?
How they make what where?
How did they make it here right now?
That's the thing about time. It's not linear like we think it is. It flows, man. It's like a loop. So part of it just keeps going back on itself.
So Sasquatch
So it's all circles.
is a time-traveling
No.
hybrid.
Sasquatch is not a time-traveling hybrid. Sasquatch is just a hybrid who's living his life, doing his thing, just trying to keep it real.
But we created him in the future, past.
No, we created him now. But we think it's the future. But it's really the past.
No. Then how did he show up in a film in the 1960s?
Because he's been here since the beginning. Like I said, it's a loop. It keeps going back on itself. And gets a little further every time. You ever heard the expression 2 steps forward, 1 step back?
I mean, Battlestar Galactica?
No, 2
Okay.
steps forward, 1 step back. Look, it's okay if you can't wrap your head around
Shut
it. It's
I
fine.
can't wrap my head around the absurd
it's absolutely
assumption.
Hey, somebody's absurdity is another person's reality.
And that's my
Just
thing.
admit it was good.
No.
That's a win for me.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. And the winner is me.
No.
All right, so moving on.
No.
Did you know that tardigrades are now on the moon? Hello. Tardigrades.
You're just going to keep going.
I won. There is no recovery. I mean, I could tell you that radioactive bananas exist, and that every banana you eat has some sort of radioactivity
You're
built
just
into
going to
it.
continue on your life.
I am. I'm going to continue winning. I'm winning right now. Did you know that? Let me play some winning music.
No.
Yes. This is my winning music. It's the future, but it's really the past. But no, it's the now.
Okay.
Okay, so tardigrades are now on the moon thanks to a
Tardigrades.
whatever. Don't be all nitpicky because you've lost. So, tardigrades, grads if you're nasty, are now on the moon thanks to a crashed Israeli spacecraft. Otherwise known as water bears, they were traveling to the moon along with human DNA. And that's what we're going to use to reseed the planet, like I've been talking about.
This reminds me of an Aeon Flux episode.
Yes, it's kind of weird. So you ever seen a picture of these little weird-looking water bear things?
No, there was an episode where they were on Aeon Flux, where they were shooting these water bears, these tardigrades, up to past the Earth's atmosphere.
Why?
That's the thing, they never explained it. She kind of fell off the platform and died in typical Aeon Flux fashion.
Well, these things were affectionately known as water bears, and you might get an explanation as to why. Okay, so these things are microscopic animals that can survive in almost any environment. Right now, actually, I have like 6 legs and a tail. They're kind of weird looking, right? And I knew that I'd seen them before in an episode of Star Trek.
And we've talked about them a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can bring these things back to life after being like frozen for 30 years. They're called extremophiles, right? Yeah. These tardigrades can shut down their metabolism and survive in hostile conditions for long periods. But can they survive in space? Or more specifically on the moon? Don't really know. But back in April, an Israeli spacecraft called the Beershit carried thousands of dehydrated tardigrades, right?
Yeah.
Along with other stuff, and crashed on the moon. And some of these people were wondering, hey, can these tardigrades survive?
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to say yes. They look like they could survive.
I know, but this just worries me.
They look like six-legged, headless, naked mole rats.
They do.
Okay? So anyway, these things crashed on the moon, and some of the people are wondering about it, and one of the people is the Arch Mission Foundation founder, Nova Spivak.
Mm-hmm.
And the Arch Mission Foundation is a nonprofit, basically organization whose goal is to create a backup of planet Earth.
Okay.
So when it does the reboot, like I was just talking about when I was winning, they can use this. They can use this to reboot the planet. Man.
No, at this point, I am putting my tinfoil hat on because a backup planet Earth is just, that's not cool, y'all. What do you guys
It is if there ain't one. Because, hey, think about it like this.
Yeah, but what do they know that we don't?
Well, they probably don't.
Okay.
Who knows? But think about like what happened to Mars, right? If the theory that Mars was actually a habitable, inhabited, fully functioning planet got zapped by a comet or an asteroid or something that either hit it or flew past it so close that it pulled the atmosphere off of it and pulled all that water and just basically sent it right to us, right? You would have all the bacteria. You would have everything necessary in that water, even as it went through space as ice, to start life here. And so what if Mars destruction seeded and created our beginning?
Yeah.
And there's been movies and theories about that, of course.
But imagine that.
It
I'll
actually
slap
makes
you
sense
so
because,
hard your atmosphere come off.
Well, think about it. I mean, when you look at like, how did all the water get here? And the answer is it came from space. Well, okay, well, how did it come from space? It didn't come as, your composition or breakdown of atoms and molecules. It came as water. It came as ice.
Yeah.
And there's ice and possibility of having water, like real water, deep in Mars. So Mars had water. It just has none on the surface anymore. So what if something came by, did a deal, pulled its entire atmosphere off? We're in direct line, because you know how it is with space, right? So the first comet hit the Earth, and then all the water and stuff came after, and then boom, there you go. Got some primordial goo, created a soup. The soup created whatever, and then boom, Earth got booted into existence. So we would effectively be the reboot of Mars. And so why not send stuff to the moon? So if we need to reboot the Earth again, we can do that.
Because the moon orbits Earth. So if Earth gets...
And it's a perfect satellite.
Yeah, it's a perfect satellite, but say Earth is destroyed or knocked off of its axis or in some way manipulated and becomes uninhabitable.
Yes.
The moon, as a satellite, has some form of dependency upon Earth.
Does it?
Yes.
No.
It needs it there.
I mean, okay, so the orbit that of the moon around our Earth, they say cannot be recreated. It's basically, it's too perfect the way it is. Even if it's moving, and it does move, it slowly is moving away from us. And the amount is like, it's minute. Yeah. But it is moving away from us. But it's been kept in orbit for so long, and the moon has its own weird composition. And the moon, they used to say that the idea is that comet hit the Earth and he created the moon. Yeah. Like as in part of the crust and blew off into space and created a moon. I don't know. It's too perfect for that. So, the moon's a base. It may not be inhabited anymore, but, hey, what if?
So let's just say the Earth is destroyed.
Because one side of it's scorched.
Or, yes.
The dark side is actually scorched.
Yeah. So Earth is either destroyed or messed up in some way that its orbit around the sun is dramatically affected. I don't think the moon is going to fall into place. I think the moon and the Earth would fall out of orbit. So how can we habitate
if the moon's a satellite?
Mm-hmm. It satellites the Earth, not the moon. Or not the sun, sorry.
Right. But I mean, if it's a satellite that was controlled and put into place.
Intentionally?
Intentionally.
Okay.
It would be possible, I would think, that it should have the ability to survive on its own. Because the real thing about the moon is, and one of the big theories about the moon is, and these are from, legitimate crazy people. You know what I mean? Because if you look at it from the outside, you're like, that's absolutely crazy. But, the thing about it is you keep going that long enough, you can sort of make it make sense, that the moon is actually hollow.
Okay.
And that inside the moon, there is something inside the moon that
Surf Nazis?
No. Why would they be surf Nazis? Surf Nazis is actually a band. It was actual World War II Nazis that went to if you're talking about Iron Sky. So.
No, because there was another movie, too.
No.
It was just as bad.
It was absolutely not as bad. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you're going to lose this again. So you lose 2 times in one episode.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, if you put all the seeds there, because that's what these guys did, right? So what they did was they created the first lunar library. It's a digital archive that holds basically 30 million pages of information. It also holds DNA samples. Mm-hmm. Thousands of dehydrated tardigrades.
Why are they dehydrated? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I understand the fact that they're, what did they call them? The extremophiles?
Yeah, but they can survive.
But give them a little bit of a chance.
Well,
give them a big gulp.
They just shut down.
Give them a big gulp and a...
Yeah, but see, if you send them up there like that, they'd probably die. If they're dehydrated, they're probably safe. Maybe dehydrated in like a test tube or something dumb like that. And when you need them, just put a little water on them. Or rehydrate them somehow. But yeah, they don't really know how much of the cargo actually ended up on the moon's surface. And how much didn't. So, I mean, if you hit it and it explodes, I mean, who knows how much stuff is actually there on the moon. So effectively what happened was this Arch mission, right?
Yeah.
Crash landed their spacecraft and just effectively threw human garbage on the moon.
Yeah, which kind of made me mad.
They threw a couple books, 30 million pages of digital information. So they threw some like old CDs, right? Some old skin cells and DNA junk, a bunch of dehydrated tardigrades, just threw it up on the planet.
It's like they put a moving box full of like yard sale leftovers.
It's the driving by and you see somebody whip their bag of Kentucky Fried Chicken trash out the window.
It's like Craigslist curb alert to the moon.
Yeah, basically. So what they're saying is that the analysis of the spacecraft's path, as well as the makeup of the lunar library itself, right? That guy Spivak is confident that the library and the library actually is a DVD-sized object made of thin sheets of nickel, survived the crash mostly intact. But that doesn't mean that the DNA of the water bearers are in good shape. We sent enough DNA to regenerate life on Earth if necessary. Although it would require more advanced biotech than we have to do that, at least the DNA is off-site for now. So in other words, the safe DNA is there, right? So they want to put it in a safe place. And so, but notice that the cells and DNA cannot survive or reproduce on the moon. If they're retrieved, they could be useful. And he also noted that tardigrades cannot reproduce on the moon regardless.
I want to know why. No,
Because they're microscopic? I don't know.
I'm going to click on that.
Well, here's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Here's where it gets kind of dumb. Some of these tardigrades are sealed in epoxy with 100 million human, plant, and microorganism cells. And some are encapsulated on the sticky side of a 1 centimeter square piece of Kapton tape that is sealed inside the disc stack.
So they created pretty much little universes.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty awesome, though.
Yeah, so some of these, since they're sealed, right, some of these are sealed in epoxy with 100 million human plant, it's all stuff, right? But they're encapsulated, and they're stuck, right? So they can't reproduce on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
But even though the dehydrated tardigrades can't spring to life on the moon, they could be theoretically gathered, revived, and studied to teach us about their time there. Yeah. So it's not like that cells can survive on the moon without, some protection from the elements, if you will, or radiation. So, so the human cells, plant cells, and microorganisms that are up there.
Oh, no.
What?
I went to the tweet.
No, why did you do that?
The tweet from Nova Spivak.
Yeah, Spivak.
Yeah.
Here we go. You don't want to say it, right?
What?
Here's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
They could basically be recovered, studied, the DNA extracted, perhaps to be cloned and regenerated far, far in the future, present, past. I win again.
No. I was going to say, unfortunately, Nova received at least 30 Jeff Goldblum gifts of Life Finds a Way.
Really?
Yeah. And then, the top 4 tweets in response to her tweet, or this person's tweet. The Interplanetary Vegan Society has started a GoFundMe, because they're vegans, for a tardigrade moon rescue mission. So
I would think that they would want to shoot some vegan safe or vegan friendly options up to the
I know.
So anyway, there you go.
But that's kind of neat. I mean, the epoxy, I don't know. I think that they'll find a way within those little epoxied little mini Earths, pretty much, or mini databases they send them up there in.
Yeah.
Because it's got, skin cells, plant cells, more microorganisms, you know, that sort of stuff. They're fine. We just send them up there in little tiny condos.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, hopefully.
So anyway, there you go. So we have basically mice monkeys, human monkey man. What's old is new again. 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back, depending on how you look at it. That's some terrible stuff going on.
Yeah, and water, unfortunately, our water is killing our dogs and small kids and elderly
humans.
people.
Yeah. So we need something to lighten it up, so here we go. Television head man. This is something that we came across on Facebook, of all places, where most good things come out, right?
This is the best.
And this is in Virginia, by the way, which is a place that we kind of call home because we're from there. And basically, so far, there's a dude. And let me explain what's going on here. So Virginia residents remain bewildered after a mysterious person with a TV on their head placed out-of-date televisions on the doorsteps of more than 50 homes in Henrico County, which is like Richmond.
Yeah.
Right. So this guy sneaks up on their porch and basically puts these televisions up, old school CRT-looking televisions. And so police have yet to identify the person behind the screen, even though he or she was spotted in action by several doorbell cameras. This guy has a television on his head. Like a helmet.
Yeah.
It actually looks kind of like a computer screen. And so he's got the television on his head. He walks up on the porch and sets an old school television, CRT, on the porch, turns and waves to the camera, and just walks away. So, the televisions have been rounded up, and the TV Santa Claus, as the neighbors have so cleverly dubbed this prankster, has been deemed harmless.
Except that it's littering.
Yeah.
And he's, disposing of debris improperly would be the charge.
Okay, so if the Israeli satellite or craft that smashed the moon throwing the country fried or KFC trash on it is not an issue, then I would think that putting televisions on a porch would not be an issue in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, it's illegal dumping. Because
Yeah.
he did not have permission of the property owners to leave the old, unusable TV on their property.
Well, I got to tell you, this guy's relatively harmless, and he's getting some traction on the social medias and stuff.
And
if you're one of these people who, if this person gets caught, and eventually he will,
Yeah.
right, who really wants to go and file a police report because he did that, you are going to be the one that automatically looks like the bad guy.
Well, one of our local news stations, I was reading their article, and this one person's kind of stoked because they're like, we got an old tube-style TV, 13-inch.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that's pretty nice.
But he did this TV man, or TV Santa Claus, did the same...
We're calling him TV Head.
Yeah, TV head. Did the same exact thing in Glen Allen last year. Or no, in a different neighborhood. Yeah, last August.
Interesting.
Yeah, last August. So it's August again. So now there's a theory.
Yeah, evidently it's a season.
Yeah, so they're thinking it's a college student prank. I don't know why college, but they're thinking it's some sort of prank that has to have a schedule.
Because
Yeah.
maybe he has to go back to school. I don't know.
Yeah, but for me, where do you get 50 old TVs from?
From a school district.
Oh,
Yeah. I once bought an auction
yeah.
from a school, and it said a lot of computers.
Okay.
Right? A-L-O-T
Mm-hmm.
of computers. And these were Macs, and they were education Macs, so all in one units, right?
Yeah.
And there was like 3 or 4 computers in there that I thought I could make a decent computer out of, so I bought it. I show up, and it was 36 Mac computers. And a couple PCs, because, see, it should have said A space L-O-T, as in a lot would be more than one, a group, of, however many there are in what's considered a lot, like 10, 15, whatever. No.
How much did you pay?
You want $26. $26 for these freaking computers. I had to get everybody I knew to come to the school and stuff like these stupid Mac computers. These are the big ones. See, these things weigh like 60 pounds.
Yeah.
To stuff all these stupid Mac computers in every car I could find to get them out of there. Because they were going to basically, they wouldn't let me store them or anything there. They wanted them gone, or there could be a fine involved. They knew what they were doing, right?
Yeah.
These buttholes. But anyway, and so I had them in my apartment. They went around like every wall in the closet. I had like 9 of them. They were all the way around it. And what I wound up having to do was I gave like 5 away.
Mm-hmm.
Is like every 3 weeks or so, I would go throw one away in the dumpster.
Oh.
Yeah. So like clockwork. Like every payday, I would go throw one away in the dumpster. So yeah, it took like 4 months to get rid of these things.
So that's what you think happened to this dude? He probably bought an auction and ended up with 100.
Or maybe he's got a warehouse of like 100 freaking TVs.
Well, and it stinks because officers and county workers had to spend all Sunday morning picking up all of these old TVs and hauling them away.
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think it's kind of funny. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And I don't want one of those old CRTs. You can't even get rid of them. You can't even, like, if you try to like take it to a Goodwill or something like that, like a donation place, like a thrift store, they won't take them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, why would you? I mean, the flat screen's the way to go. Why would you want this big 75, 80-pound?
I just...
Remember your dad gave us a TV
Yeah.
that basically stayed in the back of my car for 8 months because that thing weighed like 400 pounds, remember?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, with the person that received the television, no, it wasn't back. It was like back there like 3 months or something like that.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. So that was nice.
My thing is, he's wearing a TV on his head.
Yes.
This dude, I mean, and it looks like one of the old school TVs that
It's
you
a
grew
CRT.
up with.
He couldn't really wear a flat screen.
I mean, because this dude's got to be kind of buff to be picking up a TV and wearing a TV on his head.
No, it's not a complete TV. It's a hollowed shell.
Well, I know, but still.
I don't think you got to be that strong.
I'd fall over. So,
Maybe.
yeah. But I think it's hilarious. I kind of don't want them to find the guy, but I kind of do because I have so many questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast. We've been talking for quite a while. We got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been good. So anyway, why don't you tell people where they can find us and stuff?
Okay, so you guys can find us on all major podcast platforms. We mentioned that earlier, but you can also find us all over social media. We have a Facebook page where we release our podcast episodes and important news and updates. We have a Facebook group, and that's where we interact with you guys, share funny stories, get tips on things to talk about. Both those, if you type CreepGeeks Podcast into Facebook, you'll find us. You can also find us on Instagram, and that is going to be creep_geeks. We are on Twitter as well, CreepGeeks Podcast. Hit us up on any of those and say hi. Let us know what you think about the show. You can also go and contact us at contact@creepgeeks.com.
Yeah.
Yep.
You should hang out and check out the Facebook group. It's fun.
And again, all links that we've talked about or mentioned in this episode are on the show notes for the podcast episode.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you good?
Yep.
Me too. Anyway, we're really glad you stuck around long enough to listen to us in the show. This has been episode number 139, Toxic Algae Kills Dogs, Nuclear Explosion in Russia, Human-Animal Hybrids, and Tardigrades are now on the moon.
Yeah.
Anyway, our next podcast episode, expect an interview, a long interview from Afterlife Paranormal.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so we talked to them, and they're going to tell us all about upcoming... You want to tell them what it is? The upcoming event?
The upcoming Carolina Paracon.
Paracon, yes, very nice. So, yes. Very nice. Anyway, that's all I got.
Yep.
Cool. So anyway, appreciate you listening to the podcast. We'll see you later. So take it easy. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wishing they were obvious instead of giving into the frying, the frying. Yeah. 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 Yeah.